couples retired to bed. What happened between then and the next morning is still a mystery, but around 11 a.m. on June the 6th, a man who had been swimming in Lake Bodom made a gruesome discovery. He stumbled upon what appeared to be 4 dead bodies, and several items belonging to the group, notably clothes and money, appeared stolen. The 3 victims. In fact, the police never found a murder weapon. Some clothing belonging to the group was found covered in blood around 500 meters away from the murder site, and strange.
In the northernmost region of Europe, nestled amongst a landscape of deep forests and crystal clear lakes, lies a place that is home to one of the strangest crimes in history. Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be traveling to Finland in 1960 to look at the unsolved Lake Bodom case. June 1960 was a month like any other in Finland. The winter snow had long melted away, and the Finnish summer was already starting to heat up. Temperatures rose above the freezing mark with warm sunshine. It was ideal camping weather, so it's no surprise that between June 4th and June 8th, 2 groups of friends decided to head out to the great outdoors. The first group was made up of 4 teenage boys, ages 14, 15, 16, and 17. The second group consisted of 3 girls, ages 14, 15, and 18. The groups set up their respective camps near Lake Bodom, a beautiful lake in a secluded part of the country located about 30 kilometers north of Helsinki. Both groups would spend their time swimming, fishing, and drinking, enjoying everything that the stunning scenery and pleasant weather had to offer. By Wednesday, June, both groups had packed up and were preparing for their journeys home. But this is where our story begins to take a dark turn. On the morning of Wednesday, June, one of the girls from the all-female camp woke up early and went outside to relieve herself. She was horrified to find the lifeless bodies of her 2 friends lying by the shore, both seemingly stabbed to death. She promptly ran back into the tent to wake up her friend, who called the police upon hearing what had happened. Upon arrival at the scene, the police found that both girls had been killed by multiple stab wounds. It wasn't long before they also discovered the body of one of the young men from the neighboring male camp. He, too, had been killed by multiple stab wounds. The killer or killers had struck again sometime in the night and apparently dragged his body from the neighboring camp to the shore of Lake Bodom. With 3 people now dead, the remaining 3 survivors gave their accounts of what had happened to the police. What they told the police was truly horrifying. They said that during the early hours of the morning, they were awoken in their tents to screams. A struggle ensued, and they heard splashing in the water. They looked out of the tent to see one of the girls from the neighboring tent struggling in the water. Her name was Tuulikki. The witness described seeing a dark figure dragging her down into the depths of the lake. They screamed for help, but the dark figure disappeared below the surface. When the light of dawn revealed the horror that had unfolded, the remaining campers rushed to call the authorities. At the police station, they learned that their worst fears had been confirmed. Tuulikki had been found dead at the bottom of the lake with multiple stab wounds. It didn't take long for the media to pick up on this heinous crime. The small town of Espoo, where the killings took place, became the center of nationwide attention. Newspapers across the country reported on the tragic deaths of the 4 teenagers. To this day, the case has never been solved. The murders were so brutal, and the killer or killers were so elusive that even the most seasoned police officers were left baffled. In fact, the chief investigator of the case has gone on record to say that he believes the Bodom case to be the most difficult and enigmatic murder case in the history of Finnish criminal investigations. The police had a number of theories and suspects over the years, but every lead seemed to end up going nowhere, and the mystery surrounding the case continues to grow. One of the main challenges in this case was that the only evidence the police had to go on were the accounts given by the survivors. The attackers themselves were never caught in the act, and there were no witnesses outside the camp who could corroborate these stories. This meant that the police were essentially trying to piece together a picture of what had happened, based on the survivors' testimonies, which may have been inaccurate or incomplete due to the trauma they had experienced. To make matters worse, some of the survivors' accounts were wildly different, especially when it came to describing the attacker. According to the first girl to discover the bodies, the killer was a tall, thin man wearing a blue or green suit and a hat. She also claimed to have seen the same man walking around the lake earlier that evening, and that she had found his footprints near the victims' bodies. The next morning, however, when the police arrived at the scene, they found no footprints, adding more confusion to an already murky situation. The remaining survivors claimed that the man they saw in the water was shorter than the man the first girl had described, and still others claimed that there was more than one attacker. Perhaps unsurprisingly, many locals were quick to jump to conclusions, claiming that the killings were the work of a madman. Rumors spread like wildfire through the small town. Some people even began to suspect that the murders were actually a case of necrophilia, as the bodies had reportedly been mutilated. While such rumors were never substantiated, the intense public scrutiny placed on the case undoubtedly added pressure on the police to solve the crime as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, this desire for swift justice may have caused them to overlook crucial details or jump to false conclusions. In addition to the conflicting accounts of the survivors, another challenge for the police was that the physical evidence at the scene was extremely limited. There were no fingerprints, no DNA evidence, and no usable weapons. Even the forensic analysis of the bodies provided few answers. While the pathologists were able to determine that all four victims had been killed by multiple stab wounds, they were unable to determine the exact cause of death or the time of death for any of the victims. As time went on, the police began to investigate anyone who had been in the area at the time of the killings. They questioned hundreds of people and even brought in several suspects, but none of them could be tied to the crime. The lack of physical evidence made it nearly impossible to build a solid case against anyone. Even stranger, though, is that after decades of investigation, the police are still unsure if there was one killer or more than one. Some believe that the attacks were carried out by a lone madman, while others think that it was the work of a group of attackers. In fact, the last official report on the case, which was published in 2015, did not reach a conclusion as to whether or not the killings were carried out by one person or many. This ambiguity has led to all sorts of speculation and conspiracy theories over the years. Some people believe that the killings were actually a ritualistic sacrifice, while others think that they were the work of a serial killer. Still, others believe that the police have the wrong people in custody, and that the real killer or killers are still out there walking among us. As strange as the case itself is, perhaps what's even more baffling is the complete lack of answers. After all, in today's world, it seems almost impossible that such a heinous crime could go unpunished. With advancements in forensic technology, the police should have had ample evidence to convict those responsible. But the truth is that sometimes even the best technology is not enough to solve a crime if the evidence is either missing or destroyed, such as the case with the Bodom killings. Despite the passage of time, this case remains open and the victims' families are still seeking justice for their loved ones. So what really happened at the Bodom camp all those years ago? Who was responsible for the brutal killings and why? These questions may never be answered, and the mystery of the Bodom case will likely continue to baffle and intrigue people for generations to come. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. Your support helps me to keep producing these videos. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.